Okay, and welcome to this last video on the masking and the hair retouching. And what we're looking at in this is correcting basically if you look at the shoulders on the model, it looks all bleary here, and we want to remove these traces of hair, uh, some of them, and the best ways of doing that. Now, for this part of the actual tutorial, you'll find other tutorials for doing this. You'll find, for instance, the clone tool or whatever in some cases is okay and whatever. But really, the best method to use this is a process called FS2, which I've actually created an action for and can be purchased, and I'll talk more about that later on. But we'll look at a few ways without actually doing that. Parts we can do that will be okay, and that is basically the shoulders, and we're going to learn how to use the clone tool in a way that you may not have used before. You may have, but you may not have. So we're going to use the clone tool, and first of all let's just go to the layers. So I've got my hair folder there, and I've completed all my hair layers through the process that you've seen in the earlier lesson. And also deleted the help folder because I don't need that anymore. I don't require that now. So I've still got my background, and this should actually be, it's in the wrong place. Let's just drag this up. That should be there. There we go. So we've got our background layer, which contained the original image, and if we hide all that, you can see what we've achieved since then. And now we're going to be working on this layer. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer, so again we're protecting what we've already got should anything go wrong. And I'm going to click on the clone tool. So you can see we've got the clone stamp tool there. Now if you go to Window and you go to Clone Sources, you will get this window appear. And what we want to do with this, if we look at this, we're going to select a clone source. So we'll actually do that first. I'm going to be using the left shoulder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this shoulder actually onto this part, because this is really rough in this area. So we can eliminate that by using this part of the image. So first of all I need to increase my brush size. I'm going to get to this point where the shoulder meets the hair, and I'm going to Alt click to select my actual area. I'm going to make sure that the sample is aligned onto current layer, and that the flow is 100% and the opacity 100%. So all of those should be on. We'll just go back to the layers. Sorry, go back to our clone source. Now on the clone source, what we need to do is, if we look at this button here, it says flip horizontal. And what that means is when we clone from this area, it will flip it horizontally. So if I go to this part of the shoulder and I click, and basically if you look at the shoulder on the left hand side, you can see the cross there, and it's reversing the clone to this area. I've got to be careful of that area. I can remove that later. This is the area that I just want to get rid of this area. So that's neaten that up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the clone source and actually turn that off. So I'll click back on that button, so the flip horizontal is now off. And I'm just going to lower the flow to around 22%. Doesn't got to be exact. Just take that down. And I'm going to come to the left hand side of these marks here, Alt click, and I'm just going to click now and just take out these areas. I'll just get a bit further back on this. There you go, that's not too bad. It's not perfect, it's not as nice as I would look, but that's using that method. Now, it would be very hard to remove this hair. You can do it and you can get reasonable results, but everything you do will be much easier using the action I've created called FS2, and what that stands for is frequency separation. And what frequency separation does is it separates the high frequency information of the image from the low, and basically you can think of that as separating the textures from the colours. So the actual texture of the image, like the skin textures and whatever, from the actual colours. And by doing that we can work much better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this layer. So, and I'm going to duplicate this one again. So we're working on this one. I'll just hide the bottom layer. There we go. So we're working on this new copy, and what I'm going to do is to bring my action up. Now of course you won't have this action, but it can be purchased, and it's priced at just £5.50. I'm not sure what that is in dollars, but £5.50 is a reasonable price when you can see what it can do. So I'm going to play that selection now. I'll get this what's called median come up, and it's got a radius, and basically what I'm doing is ignore the hair here because the hair is remaining sharp because that's actually on layers above the layer that I'm working on, so we can ignore this. But basically we want to be blurring just enough to blur out the detail in the image, and this method of frequency separation is not well known. Frequency separation has been going on for a long time. It's got very bad reports because it doesn't really work fantastically, but this is a much easier method, so it's something that will really improve your image. So radius of 6 is okay. It's getting rid of the detail. It's not getting rid of the detail in the hair because, as I've explained, that's in a layer above this one, and I'm just going to click OK on that. So 6 is fine, and then it will go sharp again. So let's just have a look at the layers. What I'm going to do is to hide these hair layers. Or do I need to? No, I don't need to. No, we'll leave them on. Okay. So what the frequency separation is doing is, when I've clicked on that, it's put the masks on there, and we've got low, and we've got high 2, high 1 and low 1. Basically we need to be on low 2, and that will be selected when you actually create this. And what this does is it's separating, this layer is actually the colours, not the texture. The texture is on the high, and this low 2 is the one we work on, and that is the colours basically, or the low information. And what I'm going to do is to use the mixer brush. Now it must be the mixer brush tool, and the settings need to be wet 100, load 100, mix 100, flow 100. You can take the wetness down slightly. Other important buttons is you want this button where it says clean the brush after each stroke. That needs to be clicked in. The one to the left of that, load the brush after each stroke, that needs to be deselected, so that doesn't need to be clicked. So you must have this one selected, so we click on that. This really doesn't matter, it's usually set at 10% by default, and we'll leave it at that. That just smooths the action of the brush. So what this does just going to make the brush slightly larger. And the way you work this is, we want to get rid of this area there, and we're pushing the colour over. Now when we do this, it's not removing everything, and I don't want it to be honest, not yet. But what it's doing is it's leaving the texture there, but it's simply pushing the colours around and it's mixing the colours together. So we got a nice smooth effect, and it's just clicking. You work very carefully with this, you take your time. The more you click, the more it mixes the colours together, and you can push colours across. So if you do that, you'll push the white up, so you use strokes to go upwards, and then when you click, it'll mix the two colours together. So it's a very light work, and you just take your time. So you can see now it worked actually on the shoulder. Now if I go back to the layers and I click on the high, because I'm working with textures, what I can do is copy a texture and paste it somewhere else, and it's not going to affect the colouring in any shape or form. It's just going to affect the texture. So I'm going to click on the clone tool, and now when I alt click, well, all I'm cloning is the texture. So I'm just taking the texture of the skin, and it's taking this out. Now there'll still be a mark there because the colour is protected. We can go back to that and alter that, but we're taking out these textures. I can also do that across here. So I'm going to take out the texture of the hair and replace it with a skin texture. It's not replacing the colour, that'll come after. All I'm doing is replacing this hair with a texture from the skin. I'm pressing alt click to get my although that's coloured like the hair, the texture is of the skin. And when I go back to my low layer, and I go back to let's make sure you go back to this tool, the mixer brush. Let's just go over the shoulder there where the hair was and mix those colours out. We have to clone that just a little more just to take that out. It's not cloned over enough on that, so let's just go back and go back to the high layer. Go back to the clone brush. And you can see now we're taking out that texture. And that is now looking fairly good. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go back to the neck area now, and we need to go back to our low layer. And we click black on the brush, and we're just going to work this across. Nice and steady. Working in from each side. And mixing this colour down. And you see what a brilliant action this really is. It really is the best method to use for this. We're just brushing pixels around, but we're not brushing any texture around the textures. We've changed to the skin texture, and that is the most professional way and best way to adjust an image like this, and one used by the top professionals and not a well-known method. So you'll find things on frequency separation, but not on this method of FS2, where basically it works, where other methods of frequency separation are very difficult, very hard to do, and don't always give you great results. Okay, so we may have to remove a little bit more texture from there, from this area. So let's just go back, and always make sure that when you go onto the high, you swap and you actually go back to the clone stamp tool. That's really important, because if you use the brush, you're going to soften all the textures and it's going to look horrible. So if you get soft results, that is why. So just copying the texture of the skin, and that's a really nice cleanup, isn't it? Yeah, let's just maybe just do this little bit. I think that's looking good now. But there we have a perfect selection, a perfect edit on that. And obviously you could apply that to other areas if you wanted to get rid of other areas of the hair. I'm not too worried about those. I may remove that, but you know how to do that now. You know how to complete your image, and the last thing would be to actually put a background on. Now, I'm not sure. I'm just going to open one of my other files and probably use the background off there, just so you can see what it looks like with another background on. My original one, let's just go back to this one. And if I go to the layers on that, and there's my layer background, and I'm gonna just drag that layer, just go to the move tool, go to the layers, click on that layer, and then I'm going to drag that onto this one. There we go. And I just need to go to there and just put the opacity all the way up. And now you can see the extraction in all its glory, and it looks really nice. It's actually on the top of the layers there. I need to get that below the bottom down here. Now it's on soft light. I'm going to change that to normal. So when you first put your background image on, it will be, the layer mode will be normal. But a way of actually getting a nice texture, a nice coloration to the image. If you look at this, it looks like you're in two different rooms basically. You've got that ambient colour in the background, and the face just doesn't reflect any of that colour. So what I can do is copy this layer and drag it to the very top. It's gone inside the hair folder. Let's just take that out of there. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so we've got it on the top, and all we do is change that to soft light, and just look how that affects the image overall. It just gives it the same light. Now this background is very blurry. If it wasn't, you would need to blur the image even more. I'll just do that just to show you what you would do. So if you've got more of a normal unblurred background, you would blur the top one, and that just mixes the colours together basically and gives you more of an ambience rather than hard lines of light on the face. So we do a Gaussian blur, and you would take it up quite high. I don't need to because it's already blurred in this case. There we go. And you can see now you've got a beautiful image. You could actually take the opacity of that down if you wish, just a little bit, and just add a tiny bit to that. You could even move it to a different position and resize it to get the colours exactly where you want them. You know, you haven't got to, because you've blurred it and you're using a layer mode on it, it's not going to work. It's going to work basically, and that just means you can move the colours around to where you want them. So there we have a completed image. We'll probably take that down just a little bit more. And there we've got our perfect selection. So what we've done, let's just look. Still got our original image, so I'll put that on, and all of these I'm just going to click on them and just put them in a group, and that will allow me then just to take it off. So you can see all the messy hair, you can see the way the hair is all diffused in this area and the shoulder, and we've basically got all this focused back. We've got the hair looking much more controlled and a much better image all over, and an image that we can place anywhere. So if we just go to the group, you can see all the different layers in there. So, and when you apply that image, so basically if we just was to select everything, put the backgrounds and merge them all together, you can move that around the image and place it wherever you want, and put it on any background. Like we've just applied a background to that. That could be any background whatsoever. There we go. Lesson over, lesson complete. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you've learned something from it. All the best from Les Arnott.